Hello and welcome back to our live coverage of the start of Leg 4 of the 2017-2018 Volvo Ocean Race as the fleet leaves Melbourne, Australia and heads for Hong Kong. Once again, I'm Tucker Thompson, joined by Bianca Cook off Turn the Tide on Plastic, and we've got Mark Bergen, a local sailing expert, up in the helicopter. Here's the story. When we left the fleet after the start, they were relatively spread out in Port Phillip Bay, heading towards Mornington. But if we look at the tracker here, you can see that the orange line of Vestas 11th Hour Racing set up below the ley line and got lifted above most of the fleet. That looks to my eye to have been overstood as they came into Mornington on the farther right side of the screen there. And then a couple tacks later, they've rounded and head out the South Channel, and we've got Vestas 11th Hour Racing leading the fleet over Mapfre, then Team Brunel, Dongfang Race Team, Turn the Tide on Plastic, Sung Hung Kai Scallywag, and Team Akzo Nobel. Bianca, a tight, fast port reach the fleet is seeing.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a fast one out of here. May see some pretty big seas as we leave the heads.
Out to the right there is Mud Island. It's a very low tidal flat. And then to the left is Point Lonsdale. And then you can see Melbourne Heads. That's where they're headed out towards a current cut called the Rip. Right now the tide is ripping out. The breeze is coming in, so look for the seas to increase as the fleet pounds through the heads and sails out into Bass Strait. We're going to go to live pictures in a moment and give you an update of what it looks like in this early stages as the fleet prepares to leave Port Phillip Bay. Well, there we go. Vestas 11th Hour Racing heading along the peninsula there towards the heads. Port reach looks kind of breezy. What do you think of the sail combination? Can you tell what they've got up?
Looking at the sails, it's a little blurry. It looks like they might still have the J1 hanged on the front. Yeah, so they've still got their J1 on and just full main. Looks like a great spectator fleet still following them, though.
Yeah, the spectator fleet stayed with them mostly through Port Phillip Bay. It's been a couple hours, as most of you know, if you joined us for the official start here in Melbourne. And the fleet now heading towards the heads to go offshore into the famed Bass Strait. Vestas 11th Hour Racing. We mentioned at the top of our first show that Charlie Enright, the skipper, had to go home due to a family medical issue. Hopefully everybody is all right. So Mark Towell, his partner in this program, took over as skipper, and how proud would Charlie be now? I'm sure he's glued to the tracker, and his team is leading.
Yeah, I'm sure any sailor that's not on for this leg, it sounds like it's very frustrating and you just can't keep your eyes off the tracker.
Would that include you?
Absolutely.
Your team is out there as well. They are in fifth right now. It's a very tight group, the top 4 or 5. Two teams, Sung Hung Kai Scallywag and Akzo Nobel, went far left as we left them off the start, and I don't think that has paid off. They're still in 6th and 7th respectively, but Vestas 11th Hour Racing, by having the rest of the fleet overstand that long starboard tack fetch into Mornington, that's what we think gave them the gain. Either way, they'll take it right through the heads. Looks like fun out there.
Yeah, it certainly does. And there's been a few crew changes on here as well. We've got Phil Harmer back on board and Hannah Diamond. Hannah Diamond's come from the Nacre, and I bet she's glad to be back on board, heading north to Hong Kong. Well, a little bit south first.
Right. Look at the big breeze coming over the heads there, blasting out onto the race course, giving the trimmers a run for their money. This will be great. Helicopter shots over the front of their bow. Maybe we'll see the rest of the fleet. Mapfre, as we said, was in 2nd place. How far behind is the overall regatta leader? There they are. There's the rest of the fleet. So let's tune in now to Mark Bergen, our local expert up in the helicopter. Mark, how's it look out there? Well, maybe we'll tune back in with Mark in a moment. Look at that heel angle. Big breeze just blasting over the heads there, slamming the boats. You can see a lot of twist in the sail plan. Keel right over, stack up on deck. Okay, let's try Mark Bergen again. Can you hear us, Mark?
Yes, I'm here, Tucker. I must say this is one hell of a drag race that's going on here at the end of the morning.
It looks like a lot of fun.
I got to tell you, I don't want to be in this helicopter. I want to be on one of those boats.
We do too. I'm sure you're having fun up there. What do you see as far as the fleet spread out behind Vestas here?
Well, look, you've got Mapfre not too far behind, and as we go into the Queenscliff area, there's a couple of marks they've got to go navigate. There's always a chance that somebody's going to pick up and find a bit of lead in through the head. So this game is no good.
Big heel angle there. Looks like the breeze is coming over the heads and sort of piping down onto the fleet in big waves. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I'm seeing these bands of breeze that come in here, which is pretty normal. They come through like bullets, so there's probably a good 10-knot difference in the puffs that come through here. And the way that the teams manage that is going to be the difference between gaining on this end of this leg or not.
And the heads are quite notorious, aren't they? Tell us why.
Well, today we're going to see a perfect example. We've got a tide, wind going in opposite directions, and it's almost like a step. We've got a massive volume of water that's trying to exit out the heads. You've got a lot of wind that's coming in from the south. This is going to be showtime. I'm really looking forward to the next half hour.
We are too, and the shot you guys are giving us there behind Vestas 11th Hour Racing, you can see Mapfre in second place, and there's Team Brunel, yellow, just behind them to the left. And Dongfeng Race Team, after being over early and fouling at the start, has come back into mid-fleet. It's pretty good for them. And there's a good look in the virtual eye graphics of the fleet stacking up in a parade towards the heads. As you heard Mark say, the tide is going out, the breeze is coming in, and that should make for some pretty steep chop, Bianca, as the fleet heads offshore into Bass Strait.
Yeah, it looks like they're all prepping up well, and it seems like Vestas have pulled their J3 onto the bow and might be getting ready to possibly hoist it and have a staysail inside their J1. Sorry about that, a bit of a tongue twister there. They've also, yeah, a lot of J's. They've also got their outriggers out, which gives them a chance to kind of get the sail outboard more and get some more flow between the main and the J1. So it'll be interesting to see what sail combinations are as they leave the heads.
All right, so we could see some sail changes as they make a left-hand turn. Another question, and we'll come back to Mark for this, is whether they're going to tack and go down along the shoreline or go offshore. Apparently there's some different strategic decisions to be made there for the navigators. Stack on deck, all the crew up on deck.
They're all wearing life jackets, so they must be getting ready for some big seas as they leave the heads.
Pretty much standard practice, particularly at night? Or
yeah,
all the way around?
I mean, as soon as you start to see some weather and the breeze starts to increase, I mean, your main priority obviously is to sail the boat hard, but obviously stay safe at the same time.
Simon Fisher, the navigator, he won the last edition of the Volvo Ocean Race. This team also won the first leg of this edition of the Volvo Ocean Race, out of the blocks, followed by 2/3. Now this is the team that everyone wants to beat. Currently the leader of the Volvo Ocean Race, Spain's Mapfre, Xavi Fernandez and crew. That's Juan Vila in the background, the navigator, in his 5th Volvo Ocean Race, and they are leading overall.
I believe we have Tamara there at the pedestal. She won gold at the London Olympics and also won the World Championships as well. So it'd be pretty awesome to win the Volvo Ocean Race as well.
One thing's for sure, with this new rule, and it's great to get more women involved in top-level sailing, but one of these women in the fleet, or a few of them rather, are going to be the first women to have ever won the Volvo Ocean Race. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. It's really a step forward in the sailing community with getting more women involved, and hopefully it starts to have a cannonball effect moving through the smaller sailing community.
Certainly giving a pathway to female sailors that want to reach the top of the sport. I talked to Sally Barco about that this morning. She's on Team Brunel, filling in for Annie Lush, former SCA team member, and she's the head of the, or one of the pioneers of the Magenta Project to get more women involved in top-level sailing, and of course, they're doing it successfully here in the Volvo Ocean Race. Mapfre, if you look at their trim, their heel angle, they just look perfect pretty much all the time.
You're not wrong there.
Thanks, Bianca. I usually am about a lot of other things. What's this little white thing sticking down there?
That is
that's the bottom
board.
of the board, isn't it?
That is the bottom of the board.
Look at that heel when these big puffs come over the heads. I mean, that is a massive heel angle.
There you see Sophie probably saying goodbye to some of her fans here in Australia.
Her parents are out there. We saw them this morning. Mom was putting sunblock on Sophie's head this morning.
Yeah, she's got her hair in braids. The last thing you want is getting that scalp burnt. Got to be sun smart, right?
It's just ironic to see someone at, one of the toughest athletes in the world getting ready to go offshore, and Mom is still putting sunblock on. Looks fun. Great breeze. What a perfect way to exit Australia and head for Hong Kong. A lot in store in this next leg 4. Xavi Fernandez there in the foreground, ahead of this team. Okay, so we'd like to invite you guys to send your questions in, and we've got a crew that'll pick a few and send them up to us. Be happy to answer to the best of our abilities. All of you watching live around the world, we'd like to thank you for joining us on Facebook, and of course follow the race on VolvoOceanRace.com and the official Volvo Ocean Race app. If we get a question, I'll try to answer it, and if I don't know, we're just going to lean on Bianca here. And if you don't know, just make it up. I'm just kidding. There's the heads. It's a good shot of Lonsdale, Point Lonsdale there. The lighthouse out at the end. The fleet will be turning left. Here comes our first question. Bianca, it's for you.
All right.
On the Volvo 65, when they start planing, what's the helm feel like?
Pretty incredible. It's kind of a bit of an airy feeling, to be honest. Just to be at the helm of the Volvo 65 full stop is such an amazing feeling. I got a chance to helm on the last Southern Ocean leg. I don't get a lot of time on the helm, but I did get a chance, and it's just incredible. The adrenaline just rushes through you, and yeah, it's awesome.
Is it really powerful, really responsive helm?
Yeah, super responsive, really powerful. Like any movement you do, you can feel it very well. But yeah, no, it's awesome.
Balanced as well, or is it a struggle?
No, well, obviously it depends on your sail combination.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it depends on your sail combination, the breeze you've got at the time, but hopefully most of the time it's balanced. But you're always trying to push it to the edge.
Now, this is a shot offshore, going back inshore through the heads. It's the eastern side of the heads, outside of Point Lonsdale there, and you're going to see the fleet just poking through. They're going to come around the lighthouse on this point and then head out into the Bass Straits. And there you can see that tidal, how the tide's definitely gone out there. Quite a massive tide drop. And here we go, poking around. You'll see Vestas 11th Hour Racing leading the rest of the fleet. And there's the spectator boats following them as well.
There we go.
Mark Towell and crew. We talked about the trim and the heel angle on Mafre. These guys look pretty solid too, just rock steady. And you mentioned earlier, Bianca, that they've got another headsail.
Well, they looked like they were setting
in.
up to. They did look like they pulled the J3 onto the foredeck, as if they were going to plug it in. But it seems like maybe they've put a stop to that, and they're just going with just the J1 at the moment.
So the J3 would indicate.
The J3 would have been like
3 sail.
Yeah, 3 sail reaching. You can get up to 4 sail reaching with these boats.
Okay, we've got another question coming from our viewers around the world. Here we go. Are there any marks that must be rounded between Melbourne Heads and Hong Kong? Yes, the Solomon Islands out in the Coral Sea. They've got to leave them to port. And that's really it. There are so many other islands and atolls and even oil rigs and things like that that the fleet can navigate around. It's going to be a minefield for the navigators on each of these boats, and that's one reason Xavi Fernandez says he's more nervous about these next 2 legs than the Southern Ocean, because they were dominantly strong in that last leg. But in this leg, it's anybody's guess as to what's going to happen with these tricky, with the tricky things that they're going to encounter. And the fleet's never headed to Hong Kong before.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting. As soon as they get to Hong Kong, they've got a really narrow channel that they need to go up, and they could park up just before they're about to get to the finish line. So it's going to be an interesting one to watch.
Big breeze. You can see the main luffing there as the breeze comes in over the heads. They're no longer in the lee of the last point of land there now. It's all coming from offshore. And let's go back to Mark Bergen up in the helicopter. Mark, looks like it is breeze on. Is it increasing as the Vestas 11th Hour Racing heads offshore?
It certainly is increasing, and I'm looking out ahead of me, and I'm just seeing a lot of ditches out here that they're going to sail into. Anybody who's watching, hang on, you're going to see a lot of white water very soon.
That's interesting because the shot that we can see has relatively flat water still, and yet we've been told all day the tide going out, the breeze coming in and increasing, that it's going to be massive. There's the first couple swells that Vestas 11th Hour Racing is just easing their way over, but the worst of it is yet to come, or I should say the most exciting. Look at that, headsail luffing, top of the main luffing. They're overpowered for sure, Bianca.
Absolutely, and it looks like they've got their stack all to leeward, so they must be getting ready for tacking over as soon as they get out of the heads.
All right, so it was lighter when they started, Bianca, somewhere between 10 and 15 knots, and they had this sail, the J1. Here's our next question from Avril Hall Evans. Sorry. What is a J1, and what's the difference? You've been talking about J1, J2, J3.
Sorry, yeah, there's a lot of J's in there, isn't there? The J1 is the head sail that you can see at the moment. It's hanked on to the forestay.
In the front.
In the front, yes. And this is the only sail that's hanked on. So when they drop this, they've got the full sail dropping down. And also at the moment they're pretty heeled over, so that it's looking like maybe too much sail area up at the moment. So you could see a change soon.
Do you think they'll just change down to the J3? Is that what they're setting it for?
No, I don't think
that'd be too much.
Yeah, that's too much of a change. I think, once they get out of the heads, I think they'll be reaching, so they'll be setting up for either a fro or fractional zero or a masthead. Or, these are all sails that go on the end of the bowsprit, and they furl, and they'll be attached to the outrigger, which you can see out at the moment.
And of course, the simple answer for our viewer is the bigger the sail, for lighter air, the smaller sail for heavy air, and they've got different combinations thereof. And you can see that outrigger sticking out to the far end of the right side of our screen, and then you can see all the stack of sails down to leeward. That means a tack is coming onto port. All the crew is off the rail, so any second now, Vestas 11th Hour Racing will be tacking onto port and heading offshore into the seas.
Yeah, it looks like they're starting to set something up. Hard to tell what it is at this stage. They could just decide to reach with the J1, which is the head sail hanged on at the front at the moment, or they could decide to change to another sail.
Look at the tidal change right there. That's got to be the
there
rip
we
we've
go.
heard so much about. Wow, you can see that massive water just exiting the heads here. And there's some of the seas that Mark was telling us about. Here comes the tack. On board, I could hear somebody yell right, and look at that breeze about to hit the boat as well. On board with our leader. 3, 2, 1.
You can see the helmsman just hit the button to move the keel at the same time, so that it's ready when they've tacked over. It looks pretty wet out there already.
I mean, look at that water. Wow. That's like Niagara Falls worth of current. And are they tacking possibly to get into some of that flatter water there in front rather than pounding directly into these seas?
I think that might be the way.
Let's ask our local expert. He'll know. Mark Bergen up in the helicopter. What's the strategy for tacking there with Vestas 11th Hour Racing, and what is the alternative for some of the trailing boats?
Well, what Vestas has done is that they've actually decided to go down with the current of the old river. So underneath where they are is the deepest water, and they've avoided having to go through this massive onslaught of waves just ahead of them. Very smart tactics. They must have asked a couple of locals what to do.
To give Mark credit, you actually told me about that yesterday and predicted that is what we might see. Look at Maffrey behind. Big, huge swells as they head through the rip.
You can already see Vestas is into that flatter water.
Smart call. As Mark told us, they're into an old river underwater that's propelling them into the flatter water, and that current takes them up along the shoreline there as well. Now we're on board with Maffrey. That thumbs up to my eye means they're ready to tack, and all the crew is inboard.
Got Willie
Here they go.
Louis and Claire on the pedestal right there.
Look at that. It looks like a washing machine. It looks like boiling water underneath them. That current is amazing. Looks like a bit of a struggle to get these boats under control in these conditions, even for the best of them. Just settling in and getting the trim balanced again as Maffrey follows Vestas 11th Hour Racing up the shoreline on starboard.
You just heard they're talking about connecting the outrigger. So what they're going to do is they're going to move the clue of the J1 or the head sail to the end of the outrigger, just so that they can get a bit more flow through there.
You know, I got to give Vestas 11th Hour Racing a bit of credit, considering Maffrey's leading, but they had already plugged the outrigger in before the tack. Maffrey's doing it on the leeward side. Is that harder?
No, well, you actually saw that Maffrey had the outrigger plugged in as well.
Apparently I didn't.
No, I'm just saying they had it ready to go.
Oh, good, okay.
They had it ready to go.
So they're just shifting the lead out.
Yeah, so they'll have one sheet attached that's already led through the outrigger, and now they're just transferring between.
Old Chabby Fernandez and crew. I thought I could second guess them there, but nope. They're on top of it. Look at those huge seas. Great shots of Maffrey just pounding through the rip and up the shoreline here into the Bass Strait. Okay, we've got another question coming from a viewer. This one about the canting keel from Samantha Hobson. What powers the canting keel? Obviously under a lot of load.
We have the
hydraulic ram?
Yeah, there's a hydraulic ram that powers it, and the engine is not in gear, but the engine is used to move the keel from side to side.
Okay, and would that be a Volvo engine by any chance?
That is a Volvo engine.
Okay. There's Team Brunel next. They've also tacked Dongfeng behind them.
Interesting, it looks like Dongfeng have already put a reef in their main, so that they've got less sail area. This is the first boat that I've seen to reef so far.
It does look like a good call, because you saw the leaders, you know, often with these big puffs of breeze, including, you can see it there to the left on Brunel, about 30% of both of the sails luffing.
Yeah, you can see the breezes. You can see the line of pressure up there that they're going to get into soon. So going for a reef early might be a good call.
Well, it was a comfortable ride out of Port Phillip Bay, but these guys are certainly getting a wake-up call as they head into the Bass Straits, living up to its formidable reputation. As 4 boats now head offshore on starboard. Back up to Mark Bergen. Mark, you've given us great shots, fantastic view of what the fleet are heading into. Everyone is tacked on to starboard, as you mentioned, going into that underwater channel. Is it likely that all 7 boats are going to take the same tactic? What do you think?
Look, I'd have to say if you didn't do that, you'd have to be very brave, and you'd find out a long way, down the track. I think we are going to see them all tack over, because you just want to avoid the water that's ahead. I'm looking at steep swell that's breaking. You just don't want to sail into that. We've got much calmer water here. Even though it's boiling and bubbling coming up through underwater vents, this is much better water to sail in.
Okay, Mark, and also looking at Dongfeng here with the reef in, the 3 boats in front of them, full mains. Which call would you go with?
I think Dongfeng's got the right trim at this point.
So that's going to put a lot of pressure on the top 3 teams to have to do a reef on a reach like this. Not necessarily an easy maneuver, Bianca.
No, it's not very easy. You have to ease the main out, get the mainsail up and off the lock, and then lower it down again. I think Dongfeng have gone for the best move here, doing it in less breeze. It's a lot harder when the breeze is up.
Now, once the fleet starts heading into the Tasman Sea, the breeze is going to shift. Look at that big waves they're pounding into. But once they get going downwind, it's going to be a lot more comfortable. But tell us, with your experience in the Southern Ocean, what some of the maneuvers were like, particularly jibing in the Southern Ocean.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little taste of what it was like down there, but jibing in the Southern Ocean, you know, the first thing you have to do is you have to move the stack, and moving the stack can be a little dangerous, but basically you move every single sail on deck to leeward. Make sure you got some straps on because it could be a little while until you actually manage to roll the boat over. You've also got to move the internal stack as well, so there's a lot of prep going into a jibe. It's not something you can do very quickly, especially down there, and you really need to pick the right wave in the Southern Ocean to roll into the jibe, because if you pick the wrong wave, you could have an incident like what happened on Exo Noble with their damage to their rig. But yeah, I mean, the sea is, you can really see it's really starting to pick up, and all the guys will be in their full wet weather gear, smock, trousers, some even in life jackets, and I think early on this stage, the last thing you want to be doing is getting wet.
No, definitely a smart call. The last thing they basically can't avoid is getting wet. Looking at the way those waves are coming over the bow there. You saw Dongfang with the full, with the reef main, and it wasn't luffing. All the other ones are. So that was, as Mark mentioned, a good long-term call. And your top 4 boats on starboard, each one's just hipped up a little bit on the other. Next up, your team turned the tide on plastic, and it's very likely we'll see attack imminently.
Yeah, it looks like we've extended out a little bit further than the other boats, but it looks, I haven't seen the onboard footage, but we seem to be outside of the heads looking at that graphic.
Look at that. I mean, Dongfang just pounding into these seas. The top of the head still luffing. Boats overpowered even with a reefed main. Makes you wonder how the lead boats are struggling. I think Dongfang may reel a few of them in. And big heel, considering that they've got the whole stack to windward. They've got water ballast on board as well, right? Plus the canting keel, plus the reef. And they're still just getting pinned over on their side as they pound into these seas. Dongfang looking to break the tie with Vestas 11th Hour Racing and catch Mapfre. Currently they're in 4th, Vestas leading over Mapfre. Great graphics there of what we just saw, the live footage there of the heads, Point Lonsdale. And there's Turn the Tide on Plastic, as we expected, tacking on to starboard. They've got a reef as well.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the move that everyone will probably start doing moving forward. It'll be interesting to see what Scallywag have got when they come out as well.
That just doesn't look comfortable, particularly if you're going to go to sleep tonight.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think as Nick Dana described it in one interview, it's like being in a washing machine.
Yeah, try to eat, sleep, and live 24 hours a day in a washing machine like that.
Yeah. It's harder inside than it is outside, believe it or not.
Oh, I'm sure it's dark, and you can't see the waves, so you don't know when to brace yourself, right?
No.
Look at that big one coming on the
Oh,
bow.
there you go.
Hold on. Right about now, are you happy you're up here in the commentary booth?
Maybe just a little bit.
Let's put a positive spin on that, Bianca.
I mean, it'd be awesome to be out there sailing. It looks like, you know, great conditions to be going through the Bass Strait. But yeah, I definitely wish I was out there sailing with the guys.
Well, to be fair, I do understand.
As much as I love being here with you, Tucker,
Yeah,
I'd
no, you
rather
don't-
be out there.
Don't have to sugarcoat it. You belong out there. So considering the pounding that these boats have to take, what are you worried about with the gear, the rig, the sails, in terms of keeping them, you know, in one piece for the long run?
Well, yeah, I mean, the most important thing is to make sure that you don't break anything, because, I mean, if you don't manage to, if you were to break the rig now, it'd be a long way to get to Hong Kong. So, you know, you're always looking at the numbers of how much tonnage you've got on the rig and how much you've twisted it, and the last thing you need right now is to break something. And even though you know you want to sail the boat fast, you got to keep the boat safe and yourself safe. So I would say right now putting a reef in is the way to go.
And doing it before they got offshore into this big breeze.
Yeah.
Here we go from Ted Clements. Another question. What's the turn of shifts or hours in terms of the watch system on board?
On board Turn the Tide on Plastic, we run 4 hours on, 4 hours off, and we have a crew rotation every 2 hours. So there's always fresh people on deck.
And wet.
Yeah, always wet. But even in those 4 hours off, you could be on deck for a lot of it. You know, if you find that you're going to be doing about 10 jibes and you're off watch, you could be up for 8 hours straight. You get the sleep when you can.
Not comfortable, that's for sure.
If it was comfortable, not everyone would do it, right?
Fair enough. Well, let's go back to, speaking of comfortable, I'm sure Mark's got a comfortable seat up in the helicopter. Let's go back out to him. Mark, can you hear us?
Yeah, I certainly can, Tucker.
Well, one thing's for sure, you were right about the rip. It is massive. There's huge seas. It looks like a washing machine out there. And my question is there any end in sight? How long will this continue?
This will go for a couple more hours, and I think, you know, as we look at these boats, there's another 5 to 7 knots of breeze that's forecast in the next hour. So definitely these boats that have got the reef in are going to be the smart people. I really wonder how the other boats up ahead are going to do well in Brunel.
Yeah, they're definitely going to slow down when they go to that reef. Does it look like the boats that have a reef in, Dongfeng and Turn the Tide on Plastic, are slowly reeling the leaders in? Can you hear us, Mark? Oh well, we'll check back in. I guess we can see also on virtual eye if they are making a gain. There's the distance between each boat. For example, Mapfre 550 meters and counting behind Vestas 11th Hour Racing. The thing to watch is Dongfeng. Are they gaining or losing to the leaders? Right now, losing. Give credit to Vestas 11th Hour Racing, gaining even without a reef into these rough conditions here in the Bass Strait.
Liz Wardley on the helm there. Nice to see an Aussie leaving the Aussie harbour. Scallywag have left, and they've got Phil Mayne at the moment.
Here's another question. This from Lynn Stokes. Are the onboard reporters going to show more videos on this leg? Well, I can tell you, Lynn, each onboard reporter is required to send a certain amount of photos, video footage, and a report every single day back to Alicante, Spain. Look at those huge waves. Hang on, guys. Now, the guys in Spain will then take all of that media and send it out through different channels. There's a show every single day, the Daily Show, 1300 UTC with Niall Mayan Best. The host, he does a great job. He's often joined by Conrad Coleman and a few other guests, talking us through the strategy and what's going on each day, particularly if something goes on. For example, when Akzo Nobel broke their mast track, and the onboard reporters did a great job documenting that whole repair job on board the boat, because of course there is no way to just pull in for a pit stop when these guys are out in the ocean. But you can follow the action on, of course, VolvoOceanRace.com. There's also the official Volvo Ocean Race app. All the different social media channels will be sending out different clips of exciting moments throughout the entire leg as the fleet heads into Hong Kong.
You can see here Scallywag are moving all their sails up to windward. Usually what you do before you go is you try and move the sails first so that you're not trying to push sails uphill, basically.
Here's another question, and Franz, you'll forgive me if I pronounce your last name wrong. Lichtenauer. Franz, you can actually type back and see if I was even remotely close. But here's Franz's question. Are there any means to dry your suit or clothes while racing? Bianca, you know, you just came through the Southern Ocean, relentless 24-hour days of nonstop spray. You're wet the whole time. Is there any way to dry out on these boats?
Well, what we do is we make sure that the layers that we wear underneath our wet weather gear stays as dry as possible. I mean, it's pretty important that the wet weather gear you're wearing is good. We've got on board our boat, we've got Musto, and it's great. But if your base layers get wet, what we did was we would wear just our base layer, and we'd take our fleece off, and we'd actually put those in our sleeping bag and sleep with all that gear in our sleeping bag with us, and our body heat kind of dried it out. But your wet weather gear, you know, it's tough luck, really. You hang it on the hook and you hope 4 hours later it's a bit drier than it was when you took it off.
I mean, it's almost all but impossible, though, to have it fully dry 4 hours later in this damp environment. You're constantly getting sprayed.
Absolutely. It's pretty impossible.
Doesn't sound comfortable. I just wonder, now that these boats are one design, you know, and every boat has to have the same gear on board, why don't we just have 7 heaters for 7 boats? Would that be too much to, you know, I'd be voting for that.
That'd be a bit more like luxury.
Well, yeah, I mean, if every boat had just a heater and maybe a little fan, so you put your gear there, I'd be sleeping right in front of that.
Well,
That'd
actually,
be me.
on our boat, on every bunk we have a small fan. So, you know, when they get up to the tropics and they get around the equator, that fan will definitely be used.
I guess that's the other point, you know, there's no heat, no escape from the cold when you're in the Southern Ocean, no escape from the heat when this fleet here heads into the doldrums.
Yeah.
And crosses the equator.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty hot and sticky when you cross the equator, and you definitely won't be using sleeping bags then.
Smelly.
Very smelly.
No showers.
Well, if it rains and you've got the opportunity, a lot of guys will take that chance to rub some soap over themselves and smell a little human again.
All right. We're gonna leave it there on smelly.
Okay, copy that.
But I mean, you know, for example, look at that guy to leeward on Sung Hun Kai Scallywag. One wave to the face, down the neck. I assume he's got a dry suit on. Maybe that keeps the water.
Well, everyone has a smock, and there's a seal around your neck.
Hang on.
Looks like they might be going for, I'm not sure, but basically the seal around your neck stops the water from, well, stops the majority of the water coming down.
Look at that. You know, these aren't big rolling swells that you could see way offshore. This is just a nasty, steep, tall chop in the Bass Straits. Here's another question from Christian Cordero. Do they have any life rafts on board? This shot might be able to tell us, Bianca.
Yeah, actually, just underneath the dome that you can see on the back of the boat, we have 2 life rafts. So
those black boxes there?
Those black boxes, yep. So we've got a lot of safety equipment that we have to carry on board, and 2 life rafts is amongst them.
And you practice, everyone on board has to go through a safety training course, right?
Yes, everyone has to, before the race starts, or before they're allowed to join the team and start the race, has to go through a safety course. And in that, you know, you inflate the life raft, you get into the life raft, you actually get into the life raft in your dry suit with your life jacket inflated. So you really get to experience it. And we actually did an environmental pool. So they made the waves, they turned the lights out, they made it rain, they turned on the breeze. So it really felt like a real environment.
Something you certainly hope you never have to do.
Absolutely. It definitely made you aware that if you ever fell in, and also before that, we actually treated water in just our clothes, and it just made you realize that if you were ever in that environment, you never wanted to be in it without a life jacket on. So as soon as we feel we need to put a life jacket on, the life jackets go on, and we always clip on.
So I want to point something out on this graphic here. Look at Akzo Nobel, 14.6 knots. All day we've been covering this race, and they got off the line with everybody else. They started going upwind with everybody else. I made a very subtle comment earlier today that they just don't look like they're on the same pace. And here they are, 5 knots slower than the leaders. And it's consistent. It doesn't look like an anomaly. Something going on there, do you think?
I don't know. It's hard to say. Because I can only see a graphic at the moment, they could be potentially putting a reef in at the moment, which might be why they're going slightly slower. But you are right, they have been a little slower today, and maybe they'll be picking up the pace soon.
Here we go. Akzo Nobel, Simeon Tienpont and crew. Remember, in the Southern Ocean, one jibe broke their mast track. That took them out of the race for 2 days while they glued the new track on. The first attempt at the repair failed. And it just makes you think that one error in one maneuver can be so costly, particularly in a leg as important as the Southern Ocean. That was worth double points. But they are building pace a little bit. Helicopter, I think, heading back out towards Akzo Nobel to see exactly what's going on. Look at this great footage. Nighttime is coming here. Have they had dinner yet, do you think? Freeze-dried has come out yet or no?
I'd say they're going to save the freeze-dry for a little later. I'm hoping that they've all gone offshore with, you know, fresh fruit. And as we saw earlier before the show went live, all of them were trying to eat as much food as they possibly could before this last couple of maneuvers. But Akzo Nobel, you know, they're definitely going to come out fighting after the last leg. You know, they've got some strong sailors on board, and looking at this at the moment, it looks like they've put a reef in, so they're ready for the big sea and more breeze.
And you might have been right. They may have been putting the reef in while we were looking there.
Yeah.
You can see the tip of the mast poking up above the main, so single reef for Akzo Nobel. Speed building for sure. They look pretty good there. But to be fair, Simeon Tienpont and his crew have a lot of work to do to get back into contention in this Volvo Ocean race. So far, so good.
Like we said earlier, this particular leg is going to be a tricky one, and the lead could change quite a few times throughout the race. So it's definitely going to be an interesting one to watch.
All right, Bianca, we've got another question coming from this one from Ben Meadows. What are the dagger boards used for? Right in the middle there, the black board sticking up. There's two of them, right? And how do they work?
So when you're going upwind, when you're going downwind, sorry, you don't want you don't want the dagger boards in the water because it kind of creates a little bit of drag.
Like a dinghy.
Yeah. If you're reaching, you can play around. Like at the moment, you'll see that the boards are at different heights, just to give you a little more lift. Yeah.
So the windward one here is not used at all?
No, the windward one is definitely not used. You definitely do not want the windward dagger board down because that'll be very slow. And you can see that Axo Nobel at the moment have their leeward dagger board probably at about 75% down. So they've still got a little bit of the board up.
And that basically creates or stops your leeway, right? Because when you cant that keel, this orange keel here in the middle, cant that all the way up to windward, you're losing leeway and you regain it from sticking the board down in the water?
Absolutely, that's correct.
Keep them from sliding sideways.
Yeah, so it gives you that lift.
Simeon Tienpont there. Charge of this crew, sitting to windward. Here's another question. Look at the rudder and the keel, both bright orange, all the boats. Why is that?
I would say if something was to happen, you'd see the bright orange keel and rudders underneath the boat.
Fair enough. Something that you certainly hope doesn't happen.
Exactly. Not really something that I don't think it's something that you really would think would hope would happen. So, yeah.
No, it's, to be fair, you're right. We've seen this in a lot of modern day offshore boats. I think back to the early Whitbread round the world race footage of Drum. When Simon Le Bon and his crew lost their keel, the boat was flipped upside down. How's a helicopter going to see that? They didn't have bright orange rudders sticking up like these boats do. I think also it makes it easier to see anything stuck on them, like weed, seaweed.
Yeah, that's also
fish
true.
net.
Plastic bags.
Turning no plastics. We do not want any plastic.
No, we don't. But unfortunately, the reality is that on this leg we will be going through quite a lot of that sort of stuff. So.
You find it hard not to stop and pick up the litter, considering.
Absolutely. I mean, it's actually really devastating how much plastic there is in the ocean. I mean, just coming down on leg 2, we had 2 plastic bags on our rudders, which slowed us down, and we actually even managed to hit a wheelie bin as well.
A what?
A wheelie bin. Like those rubbish bins that you put up. Yeah.
It's really sad how much litter, debris, and plastic exists offshore in the ocean, and it's not only a cause for your team, Turn the Tide on Plastic, but the entire Volvo Ocean race. Sustainability is a major component this time around, trying to leave a lasting legacy of making the Earth a better place and certainly cleaning up the oceans.
Absolutely, and the Volvo Ocean Race is the perfect platform to send that message.
So let's go back out to Mark Bergen up in the helicopter there as we look at live footage on board Vestas 11th Hour Racing. Mark, how's it looking out there? No sign of this letting up, this strong breeze, as you mentioned, it's actually going to pick up, right?
Yeah, it's looking great out here, but I've got to go look at the Axo Nobel guys, and they just seem to be further out to sea. It's a little bit rougher for them, and that might be one of the reasons they're going a bit slower.
Excellent point. I wonder if they're just trying to get. You told me there's a headland that they've got to clear. So by going farther offshore, is that possibly what they're trying to do, or no?
I'm looking at the lay that everybody else has, and they're going to pass that headland. So I'm not sure why they decided not to pick up those 3 or 4 knots that you get in the current.
They should have checked with you first. We're lucky to have you,
call
Mark.
me next time.
Your calls have been correct all day long. I'd hire you for the Volvo Ocean Race. All right, so Mark Bergen up in the helicopter. Looks really great out there. Day 1, leg 4. of the Volvo Ocean Race 2017-2018 underway. As the fleet says goodbye to Melbourne and hello to Hong Kong, another 18 to 20 more days at sea. And this only the first night. It's going to be wet. It's going to be uncomfortable, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly will be. Hopefully they've got some good freeze dry on board.
Is there such a thing? Is that an oxymoron?
No. I mean, I think if you compare today to a couple of, decades ago, the freeze dry, I'm told, has improved. The key is to make sure that you hydrate it well enough.
Fair enough. Well, here's a look overall at the fleet. There's the headland that they're going to clear on starboard tack and then crack off a little bit, which will make sleeping a little bit better, hopefully, for the 7 boats as they head out of the Bass Straits and towards the Tasman Sea out to the right, then up the east coast of Australia, rounding the Solomon Islands in the Coral Sea, hopefully avoiding any typhoons. We're told they're not going to come. Hopefully that'll stay the prediction. And then finally, after the Solomon Islands, next stop, Hong Kong, as we wind up the start of leg 4. All 7 boats now getting their feet wet, if you will, in the big breeze and big seas in the Bass Strait. Little sleep and lots of action ahead as these crews push their boats and themselves to the limit. Well, we're going to say goodbye from Melbourne. And for Bianca Cook and Jack Lloyd, Mark Bergen up in the helicopter, and all of us here, our Volvo Ocean Race production crew in Melbourne, I'm Tucker Thompson. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned on social media. Be sure to follow all the Volvo Ocean Race action on social media 24 hours a day. Like, share, or comment on Facebook. And of course, plenty of fantastic images on our Instagram channel. For those that follow Twitter, you'll find us at Volvo Ocean Race. And for more in-depth analysis from race headquarters, at Race Experts, we'll take you there. And don't forget to download the official Volvo Ocean Race app for even more content from all the teams. And it all funnels through Race Headquarters.
After the excitement of departures, you can join us here in Volvo Ocean Race Headquarters for day-by-day updates of all the action happening out there on the legs. This is where all the drama will be, and we will be talking to the sailors every day. We'll be hearing from the teams about what's working and what's not. And why is it that we're in this room? Well, just look at all the information and all the drama we have got to bring you. So join us in the morning for the quick fixes, plus at 1300 UTC for our daily show.